Welcome to Conversations with Deborah, a bi-coastal dialogue with me, Malcolm Berman, and my good friend, Deborah Manning.
Hi, Malcolm.
Hi, how you doing, Deborah?
Good. Let's see. It's Friday. What's the date today, for heaven's sakes?
23rd.
Holy smokies, here we go again.
Do you realize a quarter of the year is through?
No, it doesn't feel that way. It
I
doesn't
don't
feel
know.
that way.
I don't know. Is it when you get older, time flies?
I don't know. I think what's happened, especially with the situation with COVID, it just has made time just different, totally different. Um, my husband Fish and I were very uncomfortable with being forced into staying at home, the stay-at-home orders and all of that. But we've grown to appreciate it in a sense. Not that we're out and about, because at this point right now, here in Greenville, South Carolina, and all of Carolina, we're open, fully open for business. Number two, they're actually opening up all the schools. The schools around Greenville were all opened for in-person learning, but Greenville County and Greenville itself was not open. And the governor just said, sorry, folks, sorry, teachers union, we're opening up, and all the kids are going back first thing on Monday morning, which will be pretty nice. But it's been an interesting, it's been an interesting year and 4 months, for heaven's sakes. It really is. We met our new neighbors that were just down the way, and they had lost their jobs, both of them, and they had to move up from Florida up here to South Carolina. And they found that it was a lot easier to live up here. They found it was more affordable, and they were actually able to find jobs, and they were very happy about it. So we presented them with our dozen eggs. Of course, we have our chickens, and we presented them with our organic eggs. They were very, very thrilled. And once again, we will only sell to people that we know, because if there's an issue with the eggs, oh, for heaven's sakes, I don't want to have a problem with anything. But the eggs here, I got to tell you, our chickens, I've been a city girl for a long period of time. And like I said, I was in my 60s when I moved here from Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. But being a city girl, I didn't realize the difference in egg quality. And when you have it directly coming from the hen, that morning, there's something different. It's great. It really is. It really is.
I had two questions for you. In fact, I was thinking about it this morning.
What's that?
Funny you should mention it. Number one, how many eggs does a chicken lay per week or day?
We are getting one per day, and these are young chickens. They're only a year old. The older that they get, as we have some that are anywhere from 4 to 5 years old, they'll start to die off, unfortunately. And we allow them hospice in a sense. We have a special area to make sure that they're not in pain and what have you. And we don't send them to the exterminator, for heaven's sakes. They stay here at home. But the young hens that we have right now, a year old, and they're laying, once again, about an egg a day, which is fascinating. We actually have to, we mark the dates in pencil on the end of the
Wow.
eggs. And we get a dozen a day, which is fabulous for me. I love
it. Now, how does an egg become fertilized? Which might be a ridiculous question.
Well,
I know you need a rooster.
No, actually, well, to be fertilized, yeah, to get another chick.
Right.
Yeah, of course you need a rooster. But in this case, no, it's like any female. They produce eggs just as part of being a female. And as I say, the egg colors that we have a dark brown from the Marins, and they are highly coveted by the bakers and the gourmet chefs here, because the Marins have a smaller yolk and more of the whites, and the whites are preferred. And oh, are you okay? Hold on, we've got a little problem here.
Uh-oh.
Ziggers. Hey, Fish, can you give me a hand here? We need some medicine for poor Ziggers.
He's coughing up a hairball.
Yeah, he is. And we have medicine for him, which he adores.
But isn't that normal for a cat to cough up hairballs?
Yes, it is. But what we do is we give him some special medicine that actually helps that whole process. And I got to tell you, talk about that cat. He hears the drawer open for the the little nibbles, and he will go nuts. He will go absolutely. He will literally do backflips to get this medicine. The rest of the cats are like, medicine? I don't want medicine. But he will do absolute backflips to go and get some of the medicine.
I think if there was a previous life the people had, you either were a farmer or a veterinarian.
It's very possible. But getting back to the hens,
Yeah.
we actually have green eggs and we have blue eggs, and those
Green
are from
eggs
the
and ham.
Araucanas. Yep, blue eggs. That's right. Dr. Seuss, of
Blue
course, lives
eggs?
here. Absolutely, blue eggs and green eggs. And thank you for helping him out. We got the ham. Yeah, and we do. Yeah, as Fish says, we got the ham and the green eggs, and then of course we have the light brown eggs that are coming from the Buff Orpingtons, and the Buff Orpingtons are they're kind of like the Labradors of all of the hens. They are very very stable, and anytime I have a broody hen, that means that they won't come out of the hen house. I will match them up with one of the Buff Orpingtons, and the Buff Orpingtons say, listen, this is what our job is. As a hen, you're supposed to go scratch, scratch, peck, peck. That's it. You're not supposed to be sitting in the chicken house. Scratch, scratch, peck, peck.
That's a mama hen or a teacher.
That's true. And the Buff Orpingtons teach them, and it's amazing. But
Okay.
it's been fun. It's been fun having the hens.
Now have you considered what is the next farm animal you're raising?
Well, what's been funny, we have, and it's embarrassing to admit, but maybe not. We have 6 cats, and the 6 cats came to us because the area that we're in seems to be a dumping ground for cats. And each one of them came to us individually. And of course, now that we have a home, we have a house, whereas in California, we didn't. We're able to at least open up the house and keep them all happy. They're all one big happy family, I must say that. The 2 boys that are Ziggy and Max. Max is the smallest one. They're brothers, and they wrestle just like brothers. And of course, Miss Gracie is the madam of the house, and she keeps everything kind of in gear. We have Sylvester, which is a black and white. In fact, sure enough, he looks like the cartoon Sylvester, black and white. He keeps the outside free of varmints. And then we have Smitty, who's the little boy cat, which is actually the brother to Gracie. And he's been a little sickly. He's kind of like the Tiny Tim of this Christmas Carol. And then finally we have Prancy. Prancy is the last. She's an older cat. And she came to us almost 5 years ago. In fact, on Christmas Eve, she came to us. And once again, each one of these cats had been abandoned. And we brought them on in. And one big happy family, which has been fun. It's been fabulous. We couldn't have done it in California, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you just gave me an idea of what to do. I think, if we do the show 4 or 5 years or whatever,
yeah,
to make edit it to like a 2, 3, maybe a 2-hour movie.
Yes.
And and it's sort of like a time lapse.
Mm-hmm.
Where we talk about the cats, we talk about the and how they do. We talk about, cats have to pass away eventually, and the sadness, and it'll be like a time lapse, all on Zoom.
It is. Well, it's been very interesting doing the Zoom conversations with you. Whether or not we have an audience, it doesn't make any difference. But it's interesting because we're just 2 regular, ordinary people, and we're discussing and talking about things that are of real importance to us, which of course brings me to my next topic of news and what have you. What the devil is President Biden doing with this Green New Deal? Do you realize what the Green New Deal actually, the actual, let me read some of the stuff that we're going to be facing at this point now. Apparently, we're going to have government inspectors who are going to go into our homes and check to make sure that we don't have any gas stoves, making sure that we have double paned windows, and that we have better insulation. And I just find it interesting that as he's asking us to do a 50% decrease in the carbon emissions, I understand that the scientists are saying that the US is one of the top compliers with this. In fact, we have carbon emissions that are down to the 1992 level, whereas China and India and some of the emerging countries don't have to comply until sometime mid 2030, maybe 2035, something like that. Now, how is that? How does that make any sense?
Well, first of all, I have to see what it says. I'm not sure. I mean, what I can see, they have government inspectors when they build, the compliance, whether they build new housing or, I don't know, apartment houses, whether that would apply to that, because they do also, they're building new buildings which are solar. So I don't think they're going to have a government inspector to come into your house to make sure that you're complying.
Well, actually, they're announcing that that's exactly what they're going to be doing. Now, our house is a 1948 bungalow house here in Greenville, and we're at this point right now not able to afford to do brand new windows. These are old casement windows. In fact, half of them, of all things, are replaced not with glass, but with plastic from the former owners. But we end up doing a lot of heat insulated draperies and what have you to keep the heat in and what have you. But we can't afford, my heavens, replacing these windows. You're looking at anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000.
Well, how about if the government said we'll do it for you, free of charge?
Well, somehow or another, I don't know. I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. I don't know.
Well, for number one, I don't
mean to be skeptical, but
well, I mean, I don't think what Biden said is sort of that could be like a wish list, because number one, they said he cannot get the emissions the emission down that much during that period. Most people say that's almost an impossible task. But they had in the summit, they had I think of the countries that were there yesterday, that they were had 80% of all the emissions and all the pollutions, all the pollutants. I don't know who the other 20% were, but it's a start. I mean, remember, we came from a dead standstill until this year. This is a start. Not everything that he said, and I don't agree with everything he says. I don't agree with everything AOL says. AOC.
AOC.
AOL is what I use on my computer.
That's okay. I'm with you.
Or any of those.
Excuse me, let me make sure. Zig, you feeling okay now? You okay, bud? Oh, okay. All right. I know. Love that medicine, don't you? He's a good boy. You're a good boy.
Better watch out. You should take a look at the medicine and make sure that it's not addicting.
I know. It's too funny.
Because a lot of people like the oxy when they were taking it. And,
yes, right. I don't know that.
That's a great medicine. Yeah.
That's true.
You're gonna have a cat that's a junkie in 6 months.
Oh God, Lord.
I have a weird mind. So,
but it does concern me. I mean, when we're talking about things like that, and for example, I was listening to MSNBC and for CNN, and going on to another topic about police shootings, about the young girl that was shot while she was attempting to stab to death another individual, another girl. There seems to be this Monday morning quarterbacking that goes on before we know exactly. I mean, when you had, was it LeBron James who actually put a picture on his Twitter account that says, "You're next," of the police officer? You're next.
I don't remember
what in the world is that all about?
It took that down immediately because of the criticism, because I don't think it was received the way it was supposed to be received.
How could it possibly be received? You're next?
It could be
what? He's going to be shot?
No, it could be you're next to be prosecuted.
Well, you don't even know what the facts are. And I find it amazing that the news media is talking about the fact that the new rite of passage for young girls, these are girls, is a knife fight, that it's no big deal having a knife fight. Well, knives do kill people, for heaven's sake.
Number one, that's going over to the far left, and I don't necessarily agree with them. I don't disagree with them because I haven't really, even when I see the picture, I haven't seen how close she was, if she was there, you know, if the guy didn't shoot,
She was holding on to the neck of the victim, the potential victim, and she had her hand up with a knife in it.
yeah,
And it wasn't just a little pocket knife. It wasn't a Boy Scout knife. It was a knife probably anywhere from 6 to 8 inches long. It could have done some real damage, for heaven's sake.
well, as you say, let me hear all the facts before I make my
I
decision.
have to agree. I have to agree with that. But I think this jumping to
Yeah.
the fact that it's okay having knife fights, it's just simply a rite of passage. It's absurd. What in the world is MSNBC talking about?
I have no
CNN
idea.
talking about this.
They were watching West Side Story.
Yes, well, yeah,
And then
here
go
we
back
go.
to Hell's
Here we
Kitchen
go.
in the 50s.
Oh, for
I mean,
crying out loud.
I mean, if you know, certain people on the left say something and the certain people on the right say something, doesn't mean either of them are right. There is a certain, you know, you have to have what's known as discretion.
Well, the other thing that's interesting is, of course, we just had the verdict of on the Derek Chauvin with George Floyd. Did you get a chance to watch any part of the closing arguments and then the subsequent verdict?
I haven't seen the closing arguments, but I know the subsequent verdict.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Well, I must say I watched part of the prosecution's arguments, and I did appreciate the fact that the prosecution said this is not about an indictment of the police officer. This is the indictment of one single police
Right.
officer. And I thought it was very interesting that he did lay to the cause of all of this ego, that it was the policeman's ego. And it's funny, as a former news reporter myself, we did stories down in Orange County about police power abuse by the Huntington Beach Police Department. And there were a group that banded together, and they did some real damage to people. And we were there on the story. We broke the story, and LA Times picked it up. And once again, it was bad cops, and it was ego, and it was a power trip, which exactly seemed to be the situation with the Chauvin case. As I say, I watched part of the prosecution. I just couldn't continue to watch the video. But once again, this is not a black and white issue. I feel as though it's a person, it's an abuse of power issue. That man was murdered. He was tortured and he was murdered.
right.
And I just unbelievable how anybody. And the other thing that was just amazing to me was the other individuals that were surrounding Chauvin while all this was going on. I don't give a goddamn, pardon my language, for, you know, you have no excuse when you see something like that is going on down. You have a responsibility. And even some of the bystanders had a responsibility. I don't care whether they're police officers or not, but I know that they were afraid. They were terribly afraid. But a man died because of their fear.
Right, but you have to remember they're coming from, you know, again, until you step into their shoes, you have to remember that most of them were black, and this was a you know, highly racial type of incident. The way it was perceived, whether it was or not, we could talk about, but the way it was perceived. So why, if you come and threaten the police, he wouldn't take the gun and shoot you and say I was being attacked?
That's a very good point. But I do also have to say that I was very, very disappointed when Maxine Waters from Los Angeles and Compton, and I was a reporter in Los Angeles, and I covered Maxine Waters and her rise to power. She goes to Minnesota, and she talks about the fact that if we don't get the right, quote unquote, right verdict, that we should go ahead and escalate. That's unbelievable. That is called incitement. I thought that's what we were looking towards impeaching and prosecuting President Trump about, was incitement.
I agree with you, but it wasn't the constant repetition. I mean, I think she should have kept her mouth shut.
Yeah.
But again, the incitement that was at the was a one-time only. I don't think she's going around preaching this on a constant way like that.
I don't mean to disagree with you, but I do disagree with you. She has a temper, and she has a history of doing this sort of stuff, not only when I was a news reporter, but especially when she was rousting up the crowd in Compton and saying that if you find someone from the Trump administration, you need to harass them. You need to say that they are not welcome here, and et cetera, kept going on and on. So she's been very vocal about the violence.
I know.
And
Well,
there's just no place for it.
harassing is not necessarily violence, but I agree with you. I'm not one of her particular fans.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other problem that I have was unfortunately, with President Biden. I wish that he would have said, instead of the jury coming up with the right verdict, I wish that what he would have said is that we're going to trust in the justice system. We're going to trust in the jury system, and we're going to allow the verdict to be made. So at any rate, that's what that was all about. And I was disappointed.
Number one, I don't necessarily trust in the jury system. It depends on how the trial was held and who represented. In this case, it was sort of balanced and it's right. But in many of the trials, the defendant is represented by public defenders who do not have they are so bogged down, they don't know what the hell is happening.
Yeah.
And basically, they plea bargain, that whether the guy's innocent or not. You always hear stories about the guy said he pleaded, he plea bargained because the attorney said, hey, if you're convicted, you're going to get 20 years to life, but this you're going to get 2-3 years and you'll be out. Because so, and not the jury said, and a lot of it, going back to down south, a lot of the times the juries were prejudiced.
And that's the problem. And I've been very critical of the Georgia law that is asking for voter identification. And I was more critical not about the law itself, but by the mere fact that Governor Kemp did not have Black leaders, did not have Hispanic leaders there while there was a signing going on. Because in fact, the changes that were made were to expand voting. Early voting was also to expand the hours of early voting. And if that was not the case, then once again, I don't understand why the governor did not have Black and Hispanic leaders there to explain what was going on. In fact, Coca-Cola has had to kind of walk back their whole disgust with the situation. Home Depot has now as well walked it on back, because now the facts are coming through. But once again, it's just the news media needs to get their act together and to stop this constant editorializing. This is craziness.
Well, I have some things for you to do during the week. Call up the governor and let's get him on the show. And
wouldn't that be nice?
Well, he can be on the square right below us. He doesn't have to do the whole half hour. But you ask him the question.
Yeah.
Why didn't?
Yeah, and nobody has asked that question, and I don't understand why somebody has not asked that question, because I think it's a legitimate question. What does the Black community and what does the Hispanic community have to say about this? I want the facts. I want to know.
Well, I think what a lot of, especially the white supremacists think, it's a changing country, and they're trying to hang on. It's no longer a white, blue-eyed type of American. Americans are in all shapes, forms, and colors.
Right, but you can't turn around, as the president did yesterday, and say that white supremacy and that the racism, systemic racism, is a stain upon the soul of America. I mean, bottom line is that I believe that white supremacists are a minority. I don't believe that they're a majority. And I think that teaching everyone that they are a majority gives them far more power than they ever even deserve. They're not a part of normal, everyday Americans. Otherwise, like I say, then why are all these people flooding into this country, wanting to come here, if in fact, all they're going to be met with is white supremacists? It's absurd. It's a narrative that is incorrect. And in fact, normal everyday people do not hold heavy duty prejudice. And if many of the laws at this point, right? In fact, it's ironic because Joe Biden, in fact, in his earlier days, had a lot of legislation that in fact targeted minorities for putting them in prison for long periods of time. He was one of the ones who did the eulogy for Byrd, Senator Byrd, who was unbelievable segregationist. I mean, it's just the hypocrisy is just amazing. And in fact, Jen Psaki, who is the press secretary to President Biden, completely would not answer the question when it was asked about the historic legacy of Joe Biden supporting segregation. I mean, you can change your mind, for heaven's sakes, but
Well, I don't
part
know.
of that systematic racism was actually done by the very president of the United States. It's
Well,
craziness.
I don't know if he if he was a racist. I think he might have supported racist people, racist politicians.
Well,
At
that's the
that
same
time.
thing, my dear.
No, but yet you have to view things in the time period, and you have to take a look. You know, what was norm for that period. He may not have been a leader, but you have to look what was norm for that period. But actually, I wanted. The other day, yesterday, did a show with the Many Shades of Green, which I have on.
Oh, nice.
And we had a reverend on.
Oh, good.
He expounds green theory, green things to do to his with other men of faith, and he said this is like the grassroots level. But what and I mean to ask him, he might be on another show that I have, the hypocrisy of the religious people. Now, supposedly, again, it's hard for me to comment on this. I'm Jewish, not religious, but I know, but I've read readings of Christ, of Jesus. And Jesus is somebody that took in the poor, didn't criticize people for what they did, was good for them. And it's like parts of Judaism that is if somebody comes in that needs food, you don't ask him what he did before, what religion he is. You feed him. If you have to give him parts of what you have, you feed him. He was for the poor. He was for the people who came to the door going at the border, whether they're Mexican, whether they're Syrians, whether they're Germans, come in. It's a Statue of Liberty thing, which I always was proud of that. Give me your hungry.
And that is still the case, but unfortunately it's changed. All of that applies at this point right now, except at this point right now, according to the woke mob, unless you're white. You realize that in Georgia, the new senator passed and he sponsored some of the legislation that would give monies only to Black farmers, not to white farmers, but to Black farmers. I mean, the racism situation has gone, the pendulum has gone the different way, and it's not right. We are a country, we're a melting pot of people. We're white, Black, brown, yellow. We're all different races and nationalities. We have a common core. Yeah, and we can't keep saying because you're white, you can't get this. Because you're Black, you can't get this. I mean, we're here for equal opportunity and for people to work and work hard.
Yeah, but the thing that you miss is if everything was in balance. But for so many years, it's always been tilted towards the white.
But interestingly enough, you realize
and the Black were minorities were discriminated
against. You realize that during the last administration, we had a dramatic lessening in the poverty rate. In fact, that the Black incomes went up dramatically, 10 to 15%. And at this point right now, they're stalled. I think part of it is because of COVID, unfortunately. But once again, for example, I don't understand why the Democrats are opposed to the education in terms of allowing Blacks to be able to place their children exactly in the schools that they want to place them into, whether they be charter schools, whether they be religious schools, whatever the case may be. The problem right now has been that you have public schools that basically cater to the bigotry of low expectations. Oh, Blacks can't do that. They can't do math. They can't do this. Hispanics can't do this. Baloney. They're people, they're kids. They shouldn't be taught because of their color, they can't do certain things.
Okay, I agree with you. The public education system right now is bad. It should be elevated. Money should be put in there. But what happens if you go to the private schools or the charter schools, the money is taken away from the public education. That's the ones that suffer, the public educations. And these schools, some of them are crazy. I mean, even I was speaking to my neighbor who teaches a school, Campbell Hall, which is, I mean, it's a far out example. They charge $35,000 to $45,000
That's crazy.
from elementary to high school. Can you imagine that?
No, no.
And,
But I think
and
I'd like to see the monies going to public schools to be actually put into some sort of an escrow account. So in fact, that we do get something for our money. The problem at this point is we have the pendulum has gone the other way in terms of the teachers unions. And for example, in California, it's been horrific what's happened in terms of the teachers unions dominating the education of children. I mean, that's not even counting this whole cancel culture situation with what is this race theory, this critical race theory that's going on? Once again.
You hear my little buzzer going off, by the way?
Oh no, we have security cameras around here, so that's what you're hearing. It's
no, it's my buzzer going off. We've been on a half hour.
Oh, we have? No.
No, but getting back to, it seems just the human nature. People who have the power have a tendency of abusing the power. If you talk about unions, before the unions were prevalent, it was the manufacturer.
I agree.
In all businesses, it was a manufacturer, the owners who took advantage of the workers.
Yep.
The unions, it started tilting the other way. The unions were taking advantage until we can, and I don't know what the answer is. The answer is it has to be a balance. But whoever has the power uses the power. It's almost like the power of the purse. If I have the money, I can tell you what to do.
Well, I understand that, but this is not a third world country. This is America.
I don't know what the difference is.
Don't say that. Don't say that, because obviously there's got to be a difference, because otherwise you wouldn't have as many people coming here to America wanting to live here as they do.
What's the third? Well, the third world country is suffering from poverty, from dictatorship, from being ruled by gangs.
Yeah,
and that's why, in fact, they were talking to Bukali, who is the new president of El Salvador, and he was saying that we don't want the people leaving. The good people are leaving us. These are people who want to work, who want to better themselves. We want them here.
Yes.
So they can improve our country. We don't want them going away.
That's right.
If you want to help us, help us by helping, either I didn't say send money, but help our country out, help support our country. So the people who come here aren't necessarily deserting their homeland. They want to stay because the family is there. They like the country, El Salvador, beautiful, beautiful beaches. They don't want to leave to come to America to live in a slum.
Yep, I have to agree.
They want safety, and they want the ability to get educated, and they want the ability to not worry about walking across the street where the gangs threaten them.
And then once again, when we talk about the defund police movement, I know that you thought it was outrageous that I suggested that police from California, Oregon, Washington State, and New York, that the police need to come to other states that actually appreciate them and stay away from the states that don't. The problem is at this point right now is that the unbelievable increase in crime, even in Los Angeles, the increase in crime, and I get worried for you and your family. I get worried for my daughter up in Oregon. She's saying at this point right now that she's feeling a little intimidated because the police are standing down. We need to keep the law and order. We need to not have the Derek Chauvins of the world dictate to us exactly whether we have police protection or not. He was a murderer, plain and simple.
Right, but
plain and simple.
Right, but the question is not the basic. We need police. I don't necessarily think of defunding police. but there has to be reform. There has to be reform, number one, in how police, approach a situation.
Mhm.
The people that they recruit. And the typical thing I remember growing up in Brooklyn, and
Yeah.
the gangbangers in Brooklyn would either become criminals or policemen because they were looking for tough guys. They weren't looking for guys who were sympathetic. In
Yeah.
fact, there was a good, all the TV shows, the TV series are now getting on the topic of police, but there's one show called The Rookies.
Yeah.
And basically, one of the last episode, it was a woman that came in the police force. She was being trained by, I forget the guy's name, Tom. I think it was Tom. But
Sure.
she was ex-military.
Okay.
And he kept on saying, actually, she was a good person, but he kept on saying, you can't think of the people that you're going to protect as combatants. They are not your enemies. They are with you. And the thing was, and she would go into an area and she would always, talk about the combatants. It's a matter of attitude, how you approach people. I think that's a whole thing. I don't know about prejudice or what, but when I think white police officers get a certain type of mental framework when they go into a minority area. I think they become more frightened.
I think all officers do, to be very honest with you. I think they, and I know because if you've ever been on a police route with one of these folks, it's very intimidating, and they're confronting extraordinary situations. That is not to discount what happened with George Floyd in any way, shape, or form. But it's a very intimidating situation that, in terms of protection, we need to make sure that we get the bad apples out, and we need to make sure that I mean, I don't want my tax dollars going to a Derek Chauvin. I don't, but I do want to have police protection, because I suppose I could protect myself, but I don't want to. I want to be able to call the police when there's a problem.
Yeah,
and that's exactly, for example, what happened with the young girl that got shot, unfortunately. And the knife fight was not a rite of passage. It's not. It's wrong.
Well, sometimes I don't necessarily think racism in some of the police is that the police themselves think they're racists. But I think once they get into a situation, there's more danger, I think, with the confrontation when they see Blacks or Latinos. I think that there's a mindset. We have to have different type of mindsets that the policemen are that we get when they first go in and do the interviews. They have to have more compassionate people, ones that aren't as prejudice. I don't know if the
problem is that you have a split second. And for example, in the case of the girl with the knife, he had less than 9 seconds to be able to make a determination. Draw your weapon and stop the knifing of a young innocent, or allow it to happen. And
right.
I think that,
Again, that I don't know. I haven't done the situation. I think of a lot of the situations, like that 13-year-old kid who threw away his gun and he was shot, or the Army guy where he wasn't shot that was stopped, the lieutenant, or the one that the Williams, the last one that was shot that I don't know if he had been white, whether the officer would have shot him.
I don't know.
I don't know if he would have perceived the danger if someone was white. That's a type of prejudice I'm talking about. But anyway, my dear, we're not going to settle this in the next 2 minutes.
No, but you know what? It's interesting to have two average people like the two of us talking over these issues. And I find it far more instructional than listening to the news media that has this narrative. You and I have known each other for a long period of time. You and I believe, feel very strongly that we want the best for America, for our kids, our grandkids, that this country is a beacon and needs to have reforms. However, has done a hell of a great job in terms of recognizing the individual as being extremely important, whereas the rest of the world perhaps doesn't feel that way. I am very, very pro-American because I've traveled the world, and this is the one place that I choose to be able to live. And I'm very proud of being an American, and I hope that more Americans become proud and
Okay.
and less divided.
I agree with you. But there's just one thought that we can pick up next week, because I don't
Okay.
expect an answer now. I was reading in the paper today that more states are trying to challenge Roe v. Wade, are trying to make laws against abortion, and bring the thing up to the Supreme Court now that the Supreme Court is, quote, more conservative.
It'll never happen.
Okay, well, the question is, think about it. Let's talk about that next week.
We will.
Okay.
We will.
In the meantime, take care of your cats.
I will.
Take care of your hens. Keep them warm, because you told me there's cold spells, and you keep
Yep.
warm.
Oh, you will.
And send
And my best to your lovely family.
okay, and send my love to fish.
Absolutely. Bye-bye
Bye.
now.